Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Tuesday, June the 23rd, 2026. It's right now just after 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3:07 p.m. And the NFL, I mean, not the NFL, the NBA draft is tonight. And I'm going to get to the other trades that was made by some other teams like the Nets, my Brooklyn Nets. I thought they made a very good trade bringing in Julius Randle, but I'm going to get to that after the draft. And I'm going to talk about the draft and stuff like that and what I think some teams did and what Minnesota did and all that other stuff. But this particular segment is going to be about the Giannis trade because obviously that was the big trade that was made today. Giannis going to Miami for a boatload of players and some picks, and he didn't go to Boston. Now, let me take it from three angles. Let me start with Milwaukee. Milwaukee had to make this move. They had to trade him. See, here's the doubt. The great thing about having a superstar, an elite player, or one of one, as they call them, these guys in the NBA, is that it makes it much easier to win a championship if you have that guy. Because it's hard to win an NBA championship without at least one superstar on your team, one elite player, one A as they like to call it. You got to have that dude, a dude like that on your team. It's almost impossible to win a championship the way the league is set up today without that one guy. So my Milwaukee had that guy, but here's the downside to having that one guy. When that one guy decides he wants to be the GM, and this is the problem I have with the LeBrons, the KDs, and the Giannis's. They love to play GM. They want to tell the organization which players to get, who to move, who not to move, whom to get. And when it doesn't work out, they never want to say, my bad, this is on me. Let me bear the brunt of this. They always want to put it on the organization and they easily use the cop out. Well, I'm not the GM. But superstars love playing the GM until it doesn't work out. And I've always said, I don't care what sport it is. I don't care if it's baseball, basketball, football, or hockey. It doesn't matter. Players make lousy GMs. Rarely when a player makes a suggestion, it really works out for the organization long term. So Giannis helped decimate this team because why? After winning the chip in 2021, which was a year after the bubble, now I consider that more of a legitimate championship than the 2020 Lakers because at least there were fans in the stands and stuff like that, and we didn't have the lockdown and all that other stuff, and it wasn't like no 45-day layoff like it was in 2020 or however long that layoff was. So I consider that a legitimate championship, but that's neither here nor there. But he wins a championship in 2021. Then Chris Middleton suffers an injury the next year, which kept them from possibly repeat. Because I think they would have possibly got back to the finals had Chris Middleton not got hurt the following year. And after that, the team slowly started regressing. But instead of maintaining the course or just adding around the edges, Giannis, as usual, well, if we're not competing for championships, we ain't on the same page. I'm not going to sign a long term deal, which now forced them into making bad deals like bringing in a Damian Lillard who did not want to come to Milwaukee. He did not want to come to Milwaukee. He wanted to go to Miami. So you gave up quite a bit of assets and draft picks for the Damian Lillard. Okay? Only for Damian Lillard to blow out his Achilles. Oh, and you gave Damian Lillard a new contract. So now you got him for 5 years for quite a bit of money. And then now he blows out his Achilles, and you see, oh, we're no closer to contending. Matter of fact, we're actually now further away. So what did you do? You cut Damian Lillard, and now you're eating that money for the next 5 years, and you got no assets. So you made a bad situation worse because you listen to your star athlete instead of telling your star athlete, listen, you just play, let me build the team. Let me see if how this roster works. That's what I appreciate about Jalen Brunson. He's a superstar, or he made himself into a superstar because he wasn't a superstar when he came into the league. He made himself into a superstar. But you don't see him dictating decisions like, okay, move this guy, bring in this guy. I want this guy. I want that guy out. You don't see him doing that. Why? Because you got a competent GM in Leon Rose or competent executive in Leon Rose and Worldwide West making the decision. They're the ones who's saying, how does this roster fit? Who needs to be moved? Who needs to be brought in? That's what you need, a strong organization. And because Milwaukee listened to Giannis, they were now in a position where now they were forced to trade Giannis because now they're nowhere near being competitive. And now they were forced to trade him to one or two teams because Giannis, after next year, was going to opt out and become a free agent. And he already let me know he didn't want to play out west. He wanted to play for the Knicks. That's whom he wanted to play for. But once the Knicks went on the run and won the championship, that basically, that door closed. So it was either play for Boston, Miami, or Cleveland. Now, obviously, Cleveland was his least attractive option. So, okay. So Cleveland was out. So now it became down to Boston and Miami. And though Boston had an attractive package of Jaylen Brown and some draft picks, I did not think Boston's package was better than Miami, not for Milwaukee, because I think Milwaukee needs a complete rebuild. And this is supposed to be a strong draft. And they have the 10th pick in this year's draft or the 13th pick in this year's draft. I forgot which one it was. But Miami had the other. So if Milwaukee had the 10th, Miami had the 13th pick. And if Miami had the 10th, Milwaukee had the 13th pick. But either way, this allows them now to have two high picks in a very strong draft this year. And if they draft wisely, they can rebuild this team in 2 to 3 years. But Milwaukee is not in a position to compete for a title, but they had to get out of that Giannis contract. Now, here's why I think they made the best move going for the Miami package instead of Boston. Because if you go for the Boston package, yeah, you're getting a better player in Jaylen Brown than you would have gotten from any player from Miami. But then now you got to pay Jaylen Brown, and you're going to be paying him what you're paying Giannis, and you'll be in the same situation. And the draft picks that Boston's going to give you is no better than Miami. If anything, the Miami package is better because Miami's not good right now. So it made more sense to go with the Miami package than the Boston package, in my opinion. Now, let me look at this from the Boston end. Boston, yes, this is the second time now you've dangled Jaylen Brown. You're going to have to trade him. And you're going to see, here's the thing. Jaylen Brown, at the end of this last season, let it be known that this was his most enjoyable season. He enjoyed this season the most. Now, why is that important? There was no Jason Tatum for 3/4 of the season. And he helped lead a team that was expected to be at the mid to lower end of the Eastern Conference to be the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, winning 60 something games. So Jaylen Brown proved he could be a number 1 on an NBA team. I mean, he was Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He was Finals MVP in the same year. And then he helped lead a team with no Jason Tatum for 3/4 of the year, he helped lead them to the number 2 seed in the East when no one anticipated that. So he's proven he's a number 1. And see, guys today don't want to be a Scottie Pippen to a Michael Jordan, even though I'm not comparing Jason Tatum to Michael Jordan. He's no Michael Jordan, but you get the point. Boston is Jason Tatum's team. And that was not going to change with Jaylen Brown. No matter how good Jaylen Brown did, it was never going to be his team. And he wants to be the alpha male on the team. And quite frankly, he's got a title. So it's not like, oh, he needs to win he's already got his ring. So now he wants to lead his own team. And I can respect that. Just come out, be man enough to say, hey, I won out. But when he basically said that this was his most the fun he's had, or this is the best, like, in other words, he considers this year the best year he's had enjoyment wise. Not the year that they won the chip, but this year. That tells me he wants to be moved. And so Boston, yeah, you're gonna have to move him. And I think this problem is going to eventually happen with San Antonio, with Dylan Harper. He's going to want to be moved. Eventually, but that's another story for another day. So I'm just focusing on these 3 teams: Milwaukee, Boston, and Miami. So Milwaukee did not trade for Giannis, and that might actually be a good thing, because I don't think if Milwaukee had traded Giannis to Boston, I wouldn't have necessarily put them as title contenders, because, again, you're not only going to lack depth, but you're almost going to be in the same situation you had with Jaylen Brown, just a different player, but it's going to force you to change your scheme. And I still think they're going to have to change the way they play anyway. But you don't have no depth, and that wouldn't have been good anyway. So, but now, if you trade Jaylen Brown for the right pieces, this Boston team can be a title contender next season. So I'm going to wait to see what moves they make before I tell you where I see the pecking order is in both conferences. So I'm going to have to come back with another video more towards the beginning of the regular season. Now this brings me to Miami. Miami had to make this move for a couple of reasons. Let's start. Yes, you had to gut the majority of your team. Today, I mean, this puts you as a hard first apron, which means now you're bumping up against that second apron, which you don't want to do as a team. But you had to make this move, because prior to this move, Miami was never really a title contending threat. They were a threat to basically be a play-in team, which means you're around that 7, 8, 9 seed, somewhere around there, 10th seed, fighting to get into the play-in, to ultimately make the playoffs, to ultimately get ramrodded in the first round. Maybe lucky you'll make a second round. But that's what this Miami team was. They were no longer title threats. At least now with this Giannis trade, this at least puts them in the middle of the pack in the East. It doesn't make them title contenders, but at least it puts them in the middle of the pack in the East, assuming Giannis is healthy. It puts them in the middle pack in the East, and now they don't have to worry about the play-in, fighting to make the play-in. So at least it gets them closer to a championship. It doesn't make them a championship title contender yet. I got to wait to see what more moves Pat Riley's going to make. But it was a move that was necessary, because at least now you got your whale. You got your elite superstar that you can ultimately build around. I think Miami is a year or two away from possibly being title contenders, just not this year. But again, I'm going to wait to see what Pat Riley does. And there's the one thing I will not do is ever count out a Pat Riley team. When he was with the Lakers, they were a championship caliber team. When he was with the Knicks, they were a championship caliber team. Though they didn't win the championship, they came close. And obviously with Miami, he made them into a championship caliber team. So you never will count out Pat Riley. And what he will do is bring structure to Giannis in that Giannis is not going to be dictating to Miami who they bring in and not bring in. That's not going to work there in Miami. Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra clearly runs that team. So they're going to basically tell Giannis, you play, you let us make the decisions how to build around you. And I have belief and confidence that Pat Riley would be able to do so. So to me, I think this was a win-win-win for all three teams in a strange way. Because now it allows Boston to trade Jaylen Brown to another team to acquire more assets that can better fit around Jason Tatum and become a deeper team because you need some depth. They lack depth. And you lack size. Those are two things you cannot lack in today's NBA. Depth and size. You got to have both. Now, Miami got the size, but they lack the depth. And they got to see how they got to figure out how they're going to have their point guard play because you can't win today without good point guard play. You don't need elite point guard play, but you better have at least good point guard play. So Miami right now is lacking a few things, and I want to see what moves Pat Riley's going to make. That's going to make, but at least now Miami becomes interesting. He at least brought Miami back to relevancy because Miami stopped being relevant. You know, since Jimmy Butler left the team. Let's just keep it real. They stopped being relevant. At least he now brought them back to relevancy. That's what this trade does. And I'm looking forward to seeing what these teams do tonight. And again, I will discuss more the Randall because I'm happy for my Nets, the move that they made, getting Julius Randle. And I want to see what draft picks they make or moves they make tonight in the draft. You're going to have 2 first-round picks. They're going to have their own round pick and Minnesota's first-round pick because Minnesota gave up their 28th pick in the first round, and they gave up their second-round pick. So basically, what Minnesota did was they gave you Julius Randle and their first-round pick just to get Julius Randle off their team. They gave up their first-round pick. So to me, the Nets made out like fat rats if they know what they're doing in the draft because they got to nail this draft. If the Nets nail this draft, next year could be very interesting here in New York, not just with the Knicks, but obviously with my Nets. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. If not, you give me a thumbs down, whatever. Leave a comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.